So this week we're going to continue the core value conversation, and this month of February we are focused on honest conversations and why that is so important for us to have a successful team. Because last week we talked about having honest conversations about performance. Now this week I want to talk about honest conversations when it comes down to our work capacity, because there are a ton of different things that we could be spending our time on. There's a ton of different things we could be doing. But if we are not honest about what capacity we really have to get the work done, then we're not going to be able to really perform the way that we should. And so, a couple of things that I want people to think about is that we've gone through and we've looked at every single job, the different responsibilities that are a part of each job. And what we try to do is spread out the deadlines. But the reality is that no one knows what your capacity looks like better than you, because you're the one that's actually doing the job. So every single person on the team needs to be honest with themselves about what do they really have the capacity to actually work on. So I created some notes on some things. So I'm going to just take a second, look down at my notes, because I think it is really important that we really start to master these tips that we have. And so the first tip that I would tell people is, when it comes down to your work capacity, one of the first things that you want to do is you want to use the project management or the practice management tools that we have in place. So the marketing team has a project management system. The accounting team uses a practice management system, and we want to use that to look and see what your deadlines are. So here's my recommendation for everyone on the team: at the very beginning of the week, you should probably take a look to see what are the deadlines that I have due this week. And don't just look at the deadlines you have due today. You should look at what is due for the entire week. And then you can start asking yourself questions like, okay, all right, am I going to be out of the office any day during the week? If you're going to be out of the office, then you probably need to start figuring out, okay, all right, how am I still going to get the work done that is on my due date list? Because other people on the team are depending on you to get that done, because your job impacts their job. And then we also want to look at things like, all right, if you have multiple things that are due on the same day, this is where you have to take a step back and you have to be honest with yourself to say, all right, is it even possible for me to get all of this done on the same day? And if it's not possible, then you probably need to look at, all right, what can we move either earlier, or if I know that this task is going to impact someone else, how do I let them know, hey, maybe we need to move the deadline on these one or these two things, and have a conversation with them to give them a heads up? Because what we should never do is we should never miss a deadline and not communicate with the people on other people on the team, because everything that we do as a team is interrelated. Now, another thing that would be very helpful is for you to really take an honest look at your capacity assessment. We went through the process at the beginning of the year, and we did a capacity review, and I'm gonna make this a lot bigger so you can see it. So what you're looking at here is, we went through the major responsibilities for a senior accountant. And what we did is we said, okay, based on the number of clients that they support, and then based on how long it takes to do these types of reviews, we laid it out to say, okay, all right, what would it look, how much time does a senior accountant really need to do this? So what we're looking at here are probably the three most important things that a senior accountant does during the month end closing process. They do an initial review. So after the bookkeeper does the accounting, they do an initial review. And what we said is, let's say this senior accountant had 32 clients to support. It takes roughly about zero point 0.3 hours, which is like 20 minutes per review. If you have 32 clients, it takes you 20 minutes per review. That's about 11 hours worth of work. And then after you give your notes to the bookkeeper, there's another final review that happens. Let's say if that takes another 20 minutes. So that's, I guess, if you expand it out, it's like roughly the math came out to about like 10.6 hours. So let's just round up and say 11 hours. So between those two tasks, it takes about 22 hours. And then what we said is, what about the closing note? So when the senior accountant goes through and drafts and writes out the closing note so that the rest of the team understands what happened with that client, what were the major financial findings that we need to be aware of. Let's say that takes about 15 minutes. If you add all that up together, that's 11 hours to do the initial review, 11 hours to do the final review, and then 8 hours to do the closing note. So if you add all that up, that comes to roughly what, 30 hours. So when you look at that, one of the things that we said is like, hey, a senior accountant should at a minimum be able and have the capacity to support 32 clients without real complication, because we've gone through and we've done the math. Now, the thing for you to think about is, let's say if you were a senior accountant, is for you to think about is, all right, if it's taking me longer than 30 hours to support 32 clients, then maybe you need to look at, okay, is there something that you're doing in the process that's taking longer than it should? Because that is a thing we have to be honest with ourselves, is that, are we spending more time on things that probably shouldn't take as long? And when we start to get honest with ourselves about that, we can start to get on track. So one of the things that we've done is we've gone through the different positions within the company and we've built out what the capacity should look like, because that's how we plan out how many people we need to hire. That's how we plan out how much work we're able to get through. Now, what I would encourage is every person in the company probably should do an assessment similar to this of your own role. List out what are the major things that you are responsible for. And then ask yourself, okay, all right, how many times a week or how many times a month am I doing that task? And then ask, how long does it take you to do the task? Because once you do the math, one of the things that you may find is that, hey, you know what? I have more than enough time to get my job done. Maybe I need to make some tweaks in how I'm doing the job so that I can improve my capacity. Because the thing is, all of us have the availability, the option to be able to make adjustments where necessary. But what we need to do is we need to first be honest with ourselves and ask, am I actually using my time wisely? Am I spending my time on the things that really do matter the most for how I help the team be successful? So this week, what I want you to do is I want you to, at the beginning of the week, take a look. What are all your due dates for the week? What is everything that you are expected to deliver on for the week? And then I start asking yourself, like, how long does it take you to complete each task? And if there's something that's happening that's slowing you down, for example, if you're waiting on someone else on the team and that's slowing you down, next week we're going to talk about how to have honest conversations with our other team members, and we'll talk and we'll address how we can approach that. But for this week, I want you to focus on, what are your deadlines and are you really using your time wisely to manage your capacity? Now, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you have more work than the time available to actually get it done, you should raise your hand, talk to your team lead, talk to Lola, myself, talk to your manager to really say, hey, I have enough time to get this and this done. Is it possible that we can adjust the deadline for these other tasks that I can't get to right away? Because there may be things that come up and there's a reason why we may need to move some deadlines. But if you aren't having honest conversations and communicating that, then there's no way for us to know what adjustments we have to make. So enjoy your week.